Hello, YouTube. Today I will be doing a double feature. I will be doing two DC animated movies. I'm gonna do them separately, um, just so I can talk about each one individually. So I will do. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do this video first, and then I'm gonna do another video right after. But this video, I will be reviewing the DC animated movie Batman Gotham Knight. Now, this movie is really, really unique in many, many ways. Um, this movie is this movie consists of six interlocking stories, all done all done by veteran Batman writers. So all people, who have done, so all, so done um done by writers who have worked on Batman before and have done basically some of like the best work on the character. So this movie, like I said, it consists of six interlocking stories. I It's basically like an anthology movie, I guess you could call it. And this movie actually does have some um it does have some Dark Knight elements to it. Like Christopher Nolan um Christopher Nolan and his wife Emma Thomas were a couple of the producers on the movie. And but the the really incredible thing about this movie is this movie was the first time that Warner Brothers Animation and DC got to turn to the great anime directors, and basically they got to turn to the great anime directors and just all of the amazing creative talent, um, and just all of the amazing Japanese creative talent in animation, so that each story is done in a different anime style. And so like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Animatrix, but it's very much that was one of the inspirations for this movie. So um the first story that I'm going to be talking about um the opening story. So it's one kid. um it is one kid and three of his friends at a skate park, and they're basically telling his friends are telling the kid um basically what they just went through, and that is Batman. And they claimed that they all had an encounter with Batman. Um, they all witnessed Batman. They all witnessed, Batman in a fight. So, um, and however, these kids don't really, because it all happened like so fast. They aren't. Each kid is basically telling. Each kid is basically telling him like what like what they think they saw. So you get like all like these like goofy ass interpretations of what they think Batman looks like, until the very end of the story, when Batman um where Batman's fight with the criminal takes them, or takes um their fight takes them to where the kids are, and they finally meet Batman in person. Um, and they finally meet Batman in person, um, and this is actually pretty pretty incredible. The kid, the kid who isn't really sure um, whether or not he believes his friend's stories, actually steps in and saves Batman's life. Um, and so it was a pretty it's a pretty intense first story. The second story is the second story is it takes place within the events of the Batman Begins. Um, two cops handpicked by Gordon. Um, um, Detective Allen and Detective Ramirez are tasked with taking um, a criminal across the Narrows, and um, both they don't see eye to eye on Batman. Detective Allen doesn't trust Batman at all. He thinks it's absolutely ridiculous that um, they're basically running errands for a vigilante, to how he phrases it. Ramirez isn't entirely sure that she can trust Batman, but she has, however, though she isn't entirely sure, um, she thinks, she feels that, she does feel like he is there to help, despite her, despite her apprehensive feelings about him. Um, so they take the criminal across the Narrows, and then while they're taking him, the they end up in the middle of a gang war between Salvatore Maroni and the Russian, and um, so they end up so Ramirez and Allen basically end up, like in the crossfire, like of that fight. Um, and then Batman obviously steps in, and Batman, obviously steps in and saves the day. Another thing I want to mention, about this movie is how friggin' incredible the visuals are in this movie. In this movie, like I said, this movie consists of 6 interlocking stories, and each story is done in a different anime style, and the animation is friggin' incredible. Like like you can tell, I, you can just tell that Warner Brothers Animation and DC really, 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 really knew what they were doing. When they turned to the great, Japanese anime directors and for this project, because the visuals are so friggin' spectacular. It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing how beautifully drawn this movie is. And it's so incredible. Um, it's so friggin' incredible. Like the animation, this is honestly one of the best friggin' beautifully drawn animated movies I've ever seen. Um, and but yeah, and it's so incredible. And then and like I said before, this is done as like an anthology, as like an anthology type, type project. So um the other story that I want to I'm not going to get into I'm not going to get into every single story in the movie, just because it would take up too much time, but the other story I really, really want to mention in this is the Deadshot story. um, is the Deadshot story, which is the last story in the movie. And if you're familiar with Deadshot, if you know who Deadshot is, if you played Batman Arkham Knight, if you played Arkham Origins, you obviously know who Deadshot is. His Deadshot in this, I love the way Deadshot is portrayed in this story. He's very much portrayed as Batman's opposite. Um, he's very much portrayed as Batman's opposite. Like the like the billionaire playboy, persona. But Deadshot again is the world's greatest assassin. He kills for pleasure, kills for money. Um, and he's very, very much portrayed as Batman's opposite in this because, again, you have one who uses guns and another one who doesn't. But yeah, in this, he's very, very much Batman's opposite in this movie. Another thing I want to mention is are the writers of this movie. I don't remember what story specifically he wrote, but Alan Burnett, comic book fans out there are obviously going to know who he is. He was one of the original creators of Batman the Animated Series. He worked on a large portion of the DC animated movies. So he wrote one of the stories in this movie. Again, I don't remember which one off the top of my head. Another one of the writers, and he's a spectacular writer, is Brian Azzarello, who is a fantastic comic book writer. He wrote a story in this movie called Working Through Pain, which is a very, very ugly episode. Very, 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 very gory, especially for a movie that's PG-13. But it's very, very gory, and it's Bruce Wayne, I think, in Africa. I don't remember off the top of my head, but you get to see Bruce Wayne's. One of the things you get to see is Bruce Wayne's training. Flashbacking, I think to his days before he became Batman. I don't remember off the top of my head. It's been a while since I've seen the movie. But that is one of the things that you get to see in this movie. And obviously the story is very much about Batman. The story opens with Batman. The story opens with Batman injured. He's very, very gravely injured, and he's obviously trying to work through that pain and push through it. Excuse me. And that is the story that Brian Azzarello wrote. Spectacular comic book writer. Absolutely phenomenal writer. David Goyer, who you guys probably know, who you guys probably know from movies like the Dark Knight trilogy, Man of Steel. He did the Blade trilogy back in the day with Wesley Snipes. So, just a lot of incredible creative talent across the board on this movie. And this was one of the ones that Kevin Conroy, who's obviously, who is Batman to so many people. Um, Kevin Conroy is Batman in this. Um, but yeah, it's just, the movie is just so spectacular. Scarecrow and Killer Croc also make an appearance, and the design of all three villains is very um, they're obviously different, with they're reimagining into the Japanese animation style. It's different, but it's different, but it's still very familiar to their comic book counterparts. So even though they're even though they're reimagined as Japanese, anime characters, they still look very much like their comic book counterparts. Their costumes and the way that they look still very much resemble their comic book counterparts. So they did an incredible job. Um, they did an incredible job with that as well. And if you haven't seen this movie, I cannot recommend this movie enough. It's a masterpiece in every way, shape, and form. Um, so let me know if you guys have seen it. If Have you watched it? What was your favorite story? And I will get started right now on my next review, because like I said, I was doing a double feature. I will I will talk to you guys later, or I will see you guys in a minute. Peace.